Well, I'm back out here by myself, dispersed camping in the wilderness, and you will not believe what I'm driving. This is just a car I borrowed so I could go out camping today. What do you really need to enjoy the wilderness? I think this car is a little quieter than my Forester was. Well, you can tell we're getting into some deeper wilderness here because the paved road has grown slightly more rough and slightly more narrow. On obstacles like this, it's all about wheel placement. I don't think I've ever been up into this area in my life. I have to keep stopping to check these spots out. This little canyon that this river goes through is really cool. I've deliberately chosen a paved Forest Service road today, and there are little spurs to campsites right off the paved road. Just about any vehicle could get into these spots. Look at this piece of cake. This is a pretty nice site. It is right on the river here. I'm not super far off the paved road. It's just up sort of past that next row of trees. So I might push a little further up and see. But at least I know there's a spot I can get into with the Camry, and really, this would be a pretty nice spot to camp. I mean, you can't complain here. My friend Sean, who you may know as Silver RD1, comes up into this area to camp a lot. He sort of inspired me to come up into this area. I figured I could get up into here pretty easily with the Camry because it's a paved road. That's a pretty nice campsite. I can see it from the road here, so we'll just keep that as a backup. I know there's other sites further up here. I know that where Sean goes to camp that's not the spot, and it's still fairly early in the afternoon, so I'm gonna push on and see what else I can find. But I mean, there you go. I just came out here. I've never been up this road before, and I really didn't know exactly what I would find. I already found some place to camp. Well, this looks like it could go down to a nice little spot. I don't know about this little road though. This may be a bit much for the Camry. Maybe with some very careful wheel placement. We'll go down and see what it looks like. The river's right there. That's one big mud hole. I would even hesitate to go through that with the Forester. At least not without very carefully checking it all along the way with a stick. No, this side's definitely out. Okay, I've spotted another little trail down towards the river. Doesn't look as bad as the first one, so I'm just gonna see. Oh, this is camp. This is camp. Instead of bringing the Gazelle, I decided to bring this little Quechua Instant Up tent that I took a look at last year. Unlike the Gazelle, this tent has to be staked in order to stand up. The instructions for this tent say to pop it up and then stake it down, but I found it much easier to work with by staking it down first. That's it. I have to admit, that's pretty fast and easy, but clearly it's not nearly as spacious as the Gazelle. Now this tent doesn't have a rain fly. It is made entirely of waterproof material. So it's got a little bit of sort of a flap, and there's a vent up underneath here for airflow, but you don't have to do an extra rain fly over the top. You just set it up and that's it. And I did test out the waterproofedness of this last year when I first looked at this tent. We gave it a really solid dousing and we didn't get any water inside except for if we had the door open, then water could drip down onto the screen here and get into the tent. But if you were camped at night and had everything closed up and it started to rain, you would stay perfectly dry in here. And this doesn't have near the space of my Gazelle. There's pretty good headroom in here. I haven't been in a rooftop tent, but I would guess that the interior height here is probably similar to many rooftop tents. So it's not a bad solution, and I think this runs about $200. So it's a little less expensive than the Gazelle. It's a lot less space for the money, but you saw how super fast it is, and it obviously packs down much, much smaller than the Gazelle. They call this a two-person tent, but I would call this a one-person tent. And I'm not sponsored in any way. They did send me this tent to test. I wanted to come out and give it a shot and share it with you guys again, or those of you who didn't see it last year, in case this may be an interesting possibility for you. If you're in a small car and you just need a more compact setup to take with you, I think this is a pretty nice choice, especially the fact that it sets up really fast and you don't have to deal with a rain fly and it's waterproof. All right. Let's talk a bit about what you really need to get out and enjoy the wilderness in some way. Basically all I have is tent, some clothes, extra layers to keep warm kind of stuff, a single bin that's got my butane stove, a pan, my coffee pot, minimal food, and some other flashlight, camping odds and ends, stuff like that. Got my shovel, my axe, and I do have the down blanket in case I need it. Sleeping bag, my little camp chair and camp table. I do have the Jackery because I got to keep my camera gear rolling. And then of course I've got my camera gear right here and some firewood left over from my last trip. If you watch channels like mine, exploring the wilderness, adventuring, camping, whatever, getting out into the backcountry, you see a lot of gear in use. You see big, capable vehicles. You see a lot of different camping equipment. You can spend a fortune on gear. Really, what do you need? Obviously you need transportation to get out here. Do you even absolutely 100% need a four-wheel drive rig? You can do it with anything, as I've proven, driving a 2007 Toyota Camry hybrid, which sits about that far off the ground. Certainly, to go to some of the places that I go, you gotta have something more than a Toyota Camry. But if you want to get out and enjoy some of the public lands that are available, you don't necessarily have to get into the very deepest corners of the backcountry. There's a lot of beautiful nature you can get to right on paved roads. Don't let what you're driving stop you from getting out and enjoying this if that's what you want to do. You need some place to sleep. You can do that for cheap. You don't need a rooftop tent. You don't even need a big gazelle tent. Whatever little tent you can find. I've seen nice stand-up pop-up tents on Craigslist for like $40. You need some way to cook. You can do that for cheap. My little table is $15 at Walmart. This stove, which I did all of my cooking on for a couple of years, $18. You don't need a fridge. You don't even need a cooler. For this trip, I brought no refrigerated food. I've got a can of chili for dinner tonight, and I've got a cup of oatmeal for breakfast tomorrow. All I gotta do is heat stuff up on that little stove, and those are two satisfying meals that are gonna take care of me without even having any refrigeration. So you can think creatively, you can find ways to get out here if you want to get out here. And if being out here and enjoying spots like this, away from everyone else in the world, that appeals to you, just get out there and do it. There's many, many ways to enjoy the wilderness without spending $20, $30, $40, $50,000 building an overland center. So I found last year that I could fit my cot inside of this tent and still have a little room on the side to move. It sort of puts me up a little close to the roof of the tent, especially at the ends, at the end like where the head is. Instead of bringing a cot, I brought the Jackery and a air pump to blow up an air mattress. The only little air pump I have is actually AC. It's designed for plugging into household current. But my Jackery 500 with its AC output will actually power it. You plug it in there, turn on the AC. I did leave in a bit of a rush this afternoon, and I've just realized I forgot the air mattress. So this may be a little more of a roughing at night than I expected. So I was actually planning on camping either tomorrow or the next night, and I realized that today I had a little dip in my workflow and realized that I might get too busy with work tomorrow or the next day to actually come out and camp. So I just said, boom, I'm gonna get out today. And I very quickly threw everything together. Now I'm accustomed to everything already being in my Forester, throwing in some food, grabbing my cameras, and ready to go. So where the pump sits on my shelf is right next to the air mattress. Took the pump, didn't take the air mattress. We'll see how tonight goes.
morning. Well, that was an interesting night. Far from my most comfortable night of sleeping. Additionally, a few quirks about this tent. It's really not a winter camping tent. There are even more vents in this thing than I realized before. It was drafty and cold all night. The other thing is, one of the features of this tent is that the fabric is blackout, and so inside it's completely dark, which is nice in the middle of summer if you don't necessarily want to wake up at 4:35 in the morning when the sun comes up. But if you're out in the rain, for example, and you need to be inside the tent with the doors closed so that no rain comes in, well, you better have a light, because even in the middle of the day you can't see anything in there. There are no windows that you can open. There's no way that you can see out from inside this tent while keeping it more or less buttoned down. And that always feels a little weird to me, that you can't peek out. If you hear a noise or hear someone driving down your trail and you want to scope out the situation, you have to unzip the interior screen and then unzip the door in order to look outside.
There's an interesting mix of trees down in this little valley. While most of Western Oregon's forests are dominated by Douglas fir, my immediate area here is made up mostly of what I believe is Western hemlock and Western red cedar.
This big boy here is Douglas fir.
Unlike the relatively flat array of shorter needles on the hemlock, Douglas fir has slightly longer needles which encircle the branches like a bottle brush. I'm pretty sure these deciduous trees right along the creek are alder, which last fall's leaves seem to confirm. But as usual in Western Oregon forests, there is plenty of big leaf maple out here as well.
Almost trying to snow. Well, I got camp packed up just in time. It's starting to come down now. It's sort of a weird combination of sleet and rain and maybe a couple of snowflakes mixed in, but I'm getting wet, so let's get out of here. Ever since I started making videos with the Forester, I've had people commenting, "You should be driving a Jeep." As, I don't know, for some reason angry that I'm driving a family car down dirt roads through the wilderness. Well, what do you think of me now? Well, I did not see this coming. It wasn't even like raining or anything crazy last night when you might expect a landslide. This is the road that I drove up yesterday. I think I can squeeze around there if I pick some of that stuff up.
Another use for the shovel.
I did stop at the ranger station on my way out of the national forest to let them know there had been a landslide on one of their roads.